This is Good Morning Europe. It's Tuesday the 29th of March, and here are your top stories.
The latest round of peace talks gets underway in Istanbul. Kiev says it's hoping for a ceasefire, but insists it won't trade land, people or sovereignty. Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich and 2 Ukrainian delegates reportedly suffered symptoms of chemical weapons poisoning at peace talks in Kyiv earlier this month. And the war in Ukraine sees home heating costs skyrocket in Northern Ireland. Now residents are calling for urgent government intervention.
Negotiators from Russia and Ukraine are in Istanbul for a fresh round of talks aimed at ending the war. Ukraine's neutrality and the status of contested areas in the east could be on the table, but with Russia's invasion largely stalled in Kyiv, it's unlikely to make concessions on territorial integrity. It's unclear what Russia at this point is bringing to the mix. NATO member Turkey is playing host as it has close relations with both sides and remains optimistic.
We
will briefly meet with the delegations ahead of their meeting. I can say that the telephone traffic we're engaged in with Mr. Putin and Mr. Zelensky is headed in a positive direction.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov was yesterday less positive and dismissed the idea that now was the time for the presidents of both countries to meet.
The crisis in Ukraine, the conflict inside Ukraine, has been brewing so long all these years that a huge number of problems have built up. Therefore, just meeting and exchanging views on what you think, I think that would just be counterproductive now.
Away from the diplomacy, and an elderly woman arrives in Kyiv, relieved to have fled the shelling in the nearby town of Irpin. The mayor of that city has now declared Ukrainian forces have taken back control of Irpin, having, he said, cleared it of the enemy. Irpin has been one of the main hotspots of fighting with Russian troops near the capital. But in besieged Mariupol in the southeast, 160,000 civilians remain trapped without food, water or medicine. The number of deaths have been put at least 5,000.
Ukraine peace talks in Istanbul start this morning and could last for 2 days. No details are disclosed, but it is clear that positions of the sides are still extremely far apart. The only good news is that delegations are again meeting face to face for the first time in more than 2 weeks, but chances of a major breakthrough have been played down by the Kremlin. On Monday, President Putin's spokesman said that there was no progress that Moscow could talk about. Russia has also announced more retaliation measures. It plans to restrict the entry for citizens from unfriendly states to its territory, and it will also present its gas for rubles detailed plan by the end of the week. As you remember, Russia wants the unfriendly states, the list includes the European Union, to pay for its gas exclusively in rubles. G7 countries called it a violation of the contracts, but Moscow does not seem to be willing to roll back. Galina Polonskaya, Euronews from Paris.
Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich and 2 Ukrainian peace envoys may have been poisoned during a meeting in Kyiv last month, according to a report in the Wall Street Journal. Sources familiar with the matter say that the victims suffered from red eyes, constant tearing and peeling of the skin. Investigative outlet Bellingcat says that the symptoms are likely to correspond to poisoning with an undefined chemical weapon, although a US official has downplayed this possibility. Abramovich and the Ukrainian diplomats are reported to have made a full recovery.
Today we proudly welcome Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, Slovakia, and Slovenia.
It's a sight that would have been impossible just a few years ago. Israel hosting the foreign ministers of 4 Arab nations, including the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain and Morocco, who all normalized relations with the Jewish state in 2020. The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken was there to help ease cooperation between the former foes.
What we are doing here is making history, building a new regional architecture based on progress, technology, religious tolerance, security, and intelligence cooperation. This new architecture, the shared capabilities we are building, intimidates and deters our common enemies, first and foremost, Iran and its proxies.
This is a new dawn. The only limits are the ones we can imagine. So, I commend the courage of those willing to break down barriers, political leaders, but also people across our societies, individual citizens who are forging new relationships as a result of this historic opening.
Blinken also met with the president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, keen to repair relations which collapsed under the Trump administration. However, Abbas accused the US of double standards, taking a hard line against Russia in Ukraine while ignoring what he called Israel's crimes.
Posters of France's 12 presidential candidates are appearing right across the country. All parties have just 2 weeks to mobilise French voters before the first round, and the heat is on. According to opinion polls, incumbent Emmanuel Macron is still favoured to win the election. Macron officially launched his campaign on Monday, but his rivals have accused him of avoiding all-important political debates after the centrist leader rejected calls to join the race during the first month of Russia's assault on Ukraine. Macron's opponent in the runoff will be far-right National Rally leader Marine Le Pen, who is predicted to secure roughly 20% of the vote. Far-right candidate Eric Zemmour appears tied with LR candidate Valérie Pécresse and are trailing behind with 11%. From Monday, all presidential candidates will be entitled to equal airtime, calculated by the National Audiovisual Regulatory Body, ACROM.
With just under 2 weeks to go until the first round of voting, French presidential candidates are stepping up their campaigns. Euronews reporter David Chazan has more.
Each of the 12 presidential candidates will now have to be given equal time on media, national radio and TV, and they will all be allowed to make a campaign broadcast on national television, which will be paid for by the state. So this is an opportunity for the lesser-known candidates to raise their profile, and it means that the main candidates who are leading the polls may be somewhat less prominent on radio and television in the 2 weeks running up to the first round vote. And as I was saying, Mr. Macron still leading the pack in the opinion polls, but pollsters are cautioning that there could be an element of unpredictability because they say there may be a low turnout simply because many voters feel that the result of this election is a foregone conclusion, and so they may not bother voting. And so, slightly paradoxically, that means that the race is still unpredictable.
American actor Will Smith has apologized for hitting Chris Rock at the Oscar Awards ceremony on Sunday night, saying he was out of line. Smith took offense to the comedian's joke about his wife, Jada Pinkett Smith, and confronted him angrily on stage. Moments later, Smith won his first Best Actor Oscar for his role in the movie King Richard. The Academy is set to conduct a review into the incident, which it has strongly condemned.